And over those 6 years, there were definitely times I was frustrated and sick of being on the shop floor. But in hindsight, it's super invaluable. It could not put a price tag on that experience for me.
Welcome to BodyShop Leaders, the podcast where we bring you real stories and insights from the people shaping the future of collision repair. I'm your host, Daniel Burkholder. Every episode, we sit down with industry innovators, owners, and thought leaders who are there leading through change, building better businesses, better teams, and better experiences for their customers. Today, I'm joined by Jordan Beshears, Vice President of Steve's Auto Body in the St. Louis Metro East area. Jordan's story is one of true progression, from working part-time in his family's shop through college to helping scale the business into a regional multi-location operation that's even become a Tesla-approved collision center. What I love about Jordan's story is that it blends grit and growth. He's hands-on, he's humble, and he's helping redefine what modern leadership looks like in a family-owned business that's adapting to the next era of collision repair. So today, we're going to talk about scaling through growth, building teams, and what it really takes to lead through change, not from a boardroom, but from the shop floor. Jordan, welcome to Body Shop Leaders.
Thanks for having me, Daniel. Looking forward to the conversation.
Appreciate it. So great to have you here. Let's just jump right in. So, Jordan, I have to go back in time a little bit to where you came from. How did growing up around the family business shape your view of leadership and what it takes to run a successful shop?
Yeah, I think that I've been through a few, I guess you could call life cycles of Steve's Auto Body. Started working for the company while I was in college for the original owner, Steve, and my father had worked for him as well. Had no desire to stay in the industry, and an opportunity for my dad came up to purchase a shop. So then him and my mother purchased the first location, and I obviously continued to work there. So, I think for Steve's has been around since the 70s, and we're actually celebrating our 50th anniversary this year. I think that it always had a great reputation, but I think especially in the first life cycle towards the end, there were definitely some cultural issues that, sometimes just put it on the back burner. And I think as my parents came in and they helped change a lot of those, and we started to become the desired place to work in the market again. And then, I think as natural as my parents were getting closer to retirement and I was wanting to put the gas pedal down, there were times that we didn't always see eye to eye on how we wanted to move forward. And I do think that, as great as family business is, sometimes there's struggles in the dynamics. And I felt that there were times where we started to take a step back again. And we've worked through all that. And as we've continued to grow, I think that, we brought on people, continued to add locations, and now we're back to being the leader in the marketplace, the desired place to work in the market. And I think a lot of that, what I've learned over those times is there's been complacency in those life cycles. And I think it's super important for us as a company to not be complacent, to continue to strive to be the employer of choice in our market, as well as, the leader in all sorts of KPIs for our customers, insurance providers, dealer providers, all things of that nature.
That is so cool. So, hearing you say that as the guy that didn't want to stay in the industry, hearing you say that, like, listening to you walk through those transitions, those life cycles, is so cool because I feel like this is a recurring theme that I hear sometimes is I didn't plan to stay here. I wasn't going to stay, but somehow we end up staying. So that's really cool. As you alluded to it, you've literally done it all. Like from my understanding, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Jordan, is you started in like the detail department, you worked your way up through paint, you worked your way into management. What did those early kind of hands-on years teach you about now leading this multi-store operation?
Yeah, I think there were definitely times I spent about 6 years on the shop floor, like you said, in the detail department, which is where I started part-time and then came on full-time as a detailer and then moved into the paint department. And over those 6 years, there were definitely times I was frustrated and sick of being on the shop floor. But in hindsight, it's super invaluable. It could not put a price tag on that experience for me. And I think one of the things that I learned there is that it helped me see the industry through a technician's eyes, which at the end of the day is the soul of our industry. None of us are making money if technicians aren't fixing cars. So I always looked at, like how could I make it better for a technician? And then as I got into the estimating side of things, I always felt that my job was to get the technician what they wanted. Whether that meant it was a difficult conversation with an insurance carrier or a customer, it was my job to get them what they needed to fix the vehicle properly. And I think that we've maintained that thought process as, I went up to leading a location, and then, we'll talk about this, I think, in a little bit about kind of changing our whole process and structure of the company. I took that on, and the people that we brought on a corporate level, we feel that I hate like ticky-tack words like servant leader. I just don't like saying stuff like that, but I do feel that it's our job as leadership is to prop up and support the people who are in the grind day to day and make sure that we're understanding the struggles that they have and how do we help them solve the problems and make their day to day easier, whether it's a technician, a parts coordinator, a blueprinter, whatever it is. I think that it's our job to help make sure that they have the tools and the support they need to complete their tasks.
That is so true. And I think you're right. We sometimes kick around the servant leadership. It gets thrown around and it can almost sound devout. I get your point there, but I really feel strongly with you that as leaders, we need to lead from the front, and we need to understand what they're going through. And so your experience of going through that, literally working in their shoes, now can in turn help you to lead better. Do you have any, I know this is maybe off to the side just a little bit, but do you have any advice to a shop owner that never has worked in the shop that you feel would be helpful for them to lead better?
Yeah, I don't think that, like, at the end of the day, I never put on a quarter panel. I didn't fix dents. I was on the paint side. So I think just humbling yourself and having conversations with the people and seeing,
Mm.
obviously, I think that there is times in the industry where there's a lot of complaining, but kind of getting to the root cause of that and just getting to know people on a personal level. We just had some conversations, like, even though I was an estimator for so many years, the claims process has changed dramatically since I was writing estimates. And there was a time where, like, I even had to take a step back and I was like beating my head off a wall, like, why are they struggling with this workload? What's going on here? Why are we having this issues? But, then we came to the realization that things have changed. We need to sit down and address these problems. So I don't necessarily think that, I do think that it helps to have the experience, but I don't think it's necessary. I think it's more how you approach the people on your team and, getting to understand what they need to be successful and really taking that to heart and thinking about ways to make their lives better, whether you've done it or not, I think is super important.
I like that. As simple as having conversations, just being humble enough to learn and have those hard, but not necessarily hard conversations. That's great. Great insight. Maybe looking a little bit back as well at, so obviously Steve started out as a single location. What was the first big turning point where you realized that Steve's Auto Body was becoming more than just a single location shop?
Yeah, I think that, kind of when we started our lean journey. So back in 2017, I sat down with my dad and I was like, I want to buy another location. And, he didn't have that appetite for growth that I had. So he basically said, that's great. I'll support you and I'll help you financially, but I'm not doing any of the work. So then my mind started ticking and it's like, well, I kind of felt like we were a traditional body shop at that time. It was kind of, drinking out of a fire hydrant, hair on fire all the time. And I realized that we needed to put in systems to allow me to get out of the day to day and just that was replicable from store to store. And right at that time, we ran into PPG's Greenbelt class. And I think that we went to that. It was me, our now regional leader, who was a technician at the time, a painter, and a structural technician that actually became our blueprinter. And we really dove headfirst into that and really attacked our process and spent, I guess about 3.5 years working on our process. And at the end of the day, you're never done. We're still working on our process, revisiting basics, but we got it to a point where we felt that we were ready to go purchase another location. And we pulled the trigger on that. We were getting ready to pull the trigger during COVID. And then obviously the world shut down. So We set it on the back burner for a little bit in 2021, bought the second location. But I feel like putting that foundation in place was when I was like, okay, we're not just throwing something at a wall and hoping it sticks. We have a replicable process that's super successful and works really well and makes sense for how we want to grow the company. So I feel like that foundation made me think that we were, ready to start growing.
Amazing. So 2017, this whole kind of process was sort of the big turning point. But then it sounds to me like you're giving a lot of credit to PPG's Greenbelt program for helping to help kind of set you up for success. Did I hear that right?
100%. Without that, I don't, I think that it's just allowed us to look at the whole industry different. It's allowed us to not have as many issues with the tech shortage, which wasn't our intention, but we're not a tech heavy. We have departmentalized systems with a disassembly team, body repair teams, our paint team, reassembly teams. And working through all those, there was times where it was frustrating because it's like you solve a problem and then it makes another problem come to light, and you kind of felt like you were never, like you would get ahead and then you would get behind. But I think working through all that and getting all the big problems solved allowed us to really see some successful results and kind of move forward to where we are today.
Excellent. So if I'm hearing you right, Jordan, your advice to some aspiring, let's say, collision repair shop leader that wants to expand is to surround yourself with people that can help you do this. And that's what PPG's program helped you do. And I don't know that it has to be PPG's program, but just put yourself in the right places that people can help you grow.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, how we do things is not for everyone, and nor should it be. I think that there's times in the
Mm.
industry where somebody sees somebody down the road and they're like, I want to be, and we were guilty of that. Like, I want to operate just like this shop does. You have to find what works for your vision, for your company, for your market. So I think, you brought up a good point, whether it's process or just networking, surrounding yourself with people who have been through expansion, who have been through, ownership changes, all that stuff. Because at the end of the day, you don't know what you don't know, and there's people that know that are willing to help you. So kind of humbling yourself and allowing yourself to network and meet those people at the end of the day is invaluable, really.
Great, great advice. Let's move on, Jordan. As a second generation leader, how do you honor the company's history while still pushing forward, pushing innovation, pushing growth? How do you try to balance that with honoring the legacy that Steve started, your parents?
I've got that question a few times, and I, honestly, I don't really think about it. I think at some point in time I will think about it, but I we try to focus more on where we're at today and what we're trying to build here. Not that it's not important to do that. I think honestly, sometimes it can be overwhelming. So I think if we just focus on the tasks that we have in front of us, that's kind of where we're at now. And I do think, at some point we'll sit back and be extremely proud of continuing on the legacy, building on the legacy, and be able to kind of take all that in. But weirdly enough, it's not something that I think about now because we're focused on serving our people now, our customers now, our insurance carriers, our dealer relationships, OEMs. That's our main focus. At the end of the day, if we don't take care of that, everything that came before us doesn't really mean anything.
That's a great answer. And Jordan, from my perspective, you are honoring the legacy that's been built by serving right where you are today. And I think too, someday you're gonna take a moment to reflect and you're gonna be proud of what you're building as a team there at Steve's Auto Body.
Yeah, I
Excellent.
think
So
kind
let's
of,
just yeah, go
sorry,
ahead.
to kind of touch base on what we said before, I feel that sometimes it's easy to get complacent and, you do look at like, okay, well, we were doing this revenue, 10 years ago, we're doing this revenue 5 years ago. We had these problems. Then I think sometimes if you look how far you come, you can get complacent and it holds you back from where you actually want to go. So I do definitely think at some point, we'll take a step back and really be super proud of everything. But I just don't necessarily feel that it's best for everyone to do that now because I think it creates a sense of complacency that will eventually make that life cycle to where we're not performing at the level that we need to. So that's kind of my view on it. It's like I just want to keep pushing forward, and I think by
Mhm.
doing that, we will take care of all the legacy questions and make sure that we're doing right by that.
I appreciate that insight. And I don't know that I had thought about it from that angle, but I agree with you. You can become lazy if it's like, oh man, we've come so far. We started at X revenue and we're here now. I appreciate you bringing that up. That's a good angle to consider for sure. Jordan, another thing that you've done at Steve's Auto Body is you've led a major push toward lean processes, and you hinted a little bit at it before. I'd like to dig into that deeper. What does that look like in real life, and what kind of impact did that have on your team and on your growth?
If you asked me, it felt very messy at the time, but I do think that we actually moved very fast, especially for how far we've come. I think it's more of it's kind of the same thing when you're in it all the time. They don't see the results, but it's like you take a step back and like we'll have conversations now where people are irritated because there was one clip that was missed in disassembly, and it's like, 7 years ago you couldn't find a welder in the shop. Those problems are miles apart, but that's their reality now. Is they're used to every clip being in the bag when it gets to reassembly. So, I always tell this story when we do tours with PPG. We have aisles down the middle of our shop that nothing can be in. And our main structural tech at our first store, the second that we put the aisle down, it was like, I can't believe we're doing this. What's going on? This is silly. And then literally a week later, he realized how much better it made his life. And we had not gotten to that part of the process in the paint shop yet. And he was like, when are we going to get them organized? This place is a complete mess. Like I don't, and we didn't even, he just like naturally came to that conclusion. It wasn't like we were like, hey, don't you realize how nice it is over here and not over here? It's like he just had this like come to Jesus moment. It was like, wow, this is making my life way better. To kind of touch on that. So we started obviously with 5S, and then we had to put some people in the correct spot. And then the next phase was we went to properly disassembling cars. So we do 100% disassembly. If it takes them 30 minutes, that's great. If it takes them 4 hours to disassemble a car, they disassemble 100% everything that's necessary to repair that vehicle. And then, we got really good at that, and cars were starting to flow, and it created a massive bottleneck in our paint shop that I absolutely we could not figure it out. It was extremely frustrating. And we brought somebody that Rod Cahoy from PPG in, and we created a pull system through our paint shop. And that was kind of when it like blew the lid off the place. Went down from 2 booths to 1 booth and started producing 30% more. And it was just like click, click, click. And then, we added, I guess probably about 2 years ago, we tightened up the timeline from the vehicle coming out of the booth to reassembly. I hate saying assembly line because it's a pull system, but that's kind of what our process looks like. And we're still revisiting things. They play this game. It's the Lego game. It seems extremely silly, but it's actually like what goes on in a body shop, and there's 3 phases to it. Because we have so many new people with the new store that we just opened, we went through all the locations and revisited that Lego game. So I think one of the things that, people in lean process, or they see, what we've done when they come on a tour, and it's like, wow, this is great. It's like, you don't realize the work that we still put in every day because we get complacent and we're still trying to solve problems. So that kind of goes into the culture and the mindset of the company. There are times when it's frustrating because it's like, wow, like talking about complacency, I'm like, well, we're producing 100 hours a day. Last year we were producing 80, but the people themselves are pushing to get better because they get frustrated when things aren't being executed properly. So it's been extremely fun and eye-opening and rewarding. And that's something that, PPG obviously helped us tremendously with it. And, we work with them with hosting tours as well because we feel like it's our duty to give back because people did that for us as well. So it's been fun. It's still a work in progress.
That's amazing. I'd like to just dig into a couple things. Can you just refresh my memory what the 5 S's stand for?
You're going to challenge me on this now.
Okay, that's okay. If I put you on the spot, that's fine. I'm sure I've known them, but I just right now I'm just like drawing a total blank.
So, sort, systematically clean, sustain, man. You put me on the spot.
You're good, Jordan. You're good. We made it the whole way to 3. That's perfect.
I think it's one of those things that, like we have our shops organized. I think sometimes people take 5S a little too crazy. I'm more a proponent of the overall process. I'm not going to, lose
Yeah.
my mind if there's a little bit of dirt sometimes and stuff like that. We obviously try to keep everything as clean as possible and as organized as possible, but we're also in a industry that has a lot of variation and you're not manufacturing cars. There's way more SKUs, I guess you could say, in what we do. So there are times where things get a little bit out of whack, but it's more just, you know, the major things being taken care of
Right.
from a 5S standpoint. At the end of the day, if you 5S your shop and you don't have a process surrounding that, you're not going to go from 1.5 hour touch time to 3.5 hour touch time. I think that's something that people think is going to happen. That doesn't. That's more of just showing that you can implement something. At
Mhm.
least in my eyes, I know there's probably people out there that completely disagree with that, but that's fine as well.
Yeah, you betcha. You have to make any system that you choose, whether it's 5S or some other system, you have to make it work for you rather than you becoming a servant and a slave to it. The other thing that you mentioned, the Lego game, do you mind just telling us just a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so the first part of it, you just throw a bunch of Legos together, and it's just like a traditional body shop. You have a production manager, technician one, technician two, technician three, and then a QC manager. And you tell them go as fast as you can. So they're just handing out cards, and technician one's job is very easy. Technician two's job has a ton of detail. Technician's three job is pretty simple, and then QC, you're literally just looking it over. So it's literally the idea, let's get a car and push it to paint, push it to paint, push it to paint, push it to paint. Well, then paint can't handle it. So you have this huge buildup of inventory between technician one and technician two. And then technician three, which would essentially be reassembly, is waiting a lot for these Legos to get pushed through. And then you have a guy at the end that QCs, and it's like, well, why didn't we QC the whole process? So then the second phase is in the group of Legos, there's a bunch of stuff that we don't need. Not a bunch, but there's Legos that like don't fit the
Hmm.
Legos that you're supposed to build. So you let them sort everything out, and then you see some incremental improvements. Well, then in the third stage, you create, which we have created, like actually in real life on the shop floor, a pull system. And you see the chaos go away and the production ramp up like crazy wise, which
Amazing.
also drives up net profit. So it's awesome to see it. Like people are like, oh, we're playing Legos. This is fun. Some people get irritated with it and think it's silly. But then when you see the end product, you're like, whoa, we got way more done. We took out the stress. We all made more money. How was that possible? And it's possible through a pull system. So it's
That's
very
pretty
eye
cool.
opening. It's like I said, we just revisit it with all of our shops, and there's some people that are new that are like, wow, this is why you don't want us to send another car to paint because there's too much whip and paint. It's not getting that car done any faster by sending this. We have another constraint, which is reassembly, which needs to get
Mm.
attacked to get the vehicle out the door. So it's very eye opening. It's a fun exercise.
It sounds like it.
Yeah.
It sounds like something I would enjoy doing. Very good. Let's move on. I'd like to dig into kind of the people side of scaling. When you start adding locations and systems, and as you just have done, your culture can get diluted fast. You're bringing on a lot of new people. How do you keep your team aligned and motivated through adding new locations?
I would agree with that. That has not been our experience, but I would generally agree with that. We have been
Tell me more.
super, super fortunate. I think that we made such a big hiring push over the past year that, and we had a kind of a buzz going into the greenfield being built, and we've hired probably 15 people in the last year, and I think only two of them haven't worked out, and the 13 others are they all A-level players? No, but I think for their role in the company, they're all very, very good and have added a ton to kind of what we want to build. So we have been extremely fortunate. But going back to, I think that it's also naive to think that it's always going to be like that. I think transparency is super important, which I know that we'll touch on that a little bit as well. But at the end of the day, people have to know what's expected of them. I struggle with that sometimes. I don't feel like I'm a great communicator, but if you don't give people the support and the communication of what's expected of them, how are they going to fulfill what you want them to fulfill? And I think I hate the phrase too, hire slow, fire fast, because I think sometimes we fire people too fast. I also think sometimes we fire people too slow. It's very situational for me. But we've had some people that, like our regional leader, for example, he came from being a technician. I worked with him. This was at a single store for a very long time. And it's like, are we going to get there? Are we going to get there? And, he would get over a hump and then it would seem like there would be a setback. And then he would get over another hump and it seemed like there would be a setback. And I just saw something in him that made me know that he was going to be able to get there. And there were numerous people. It's like, I can't believe you have him in this role. I'm like, that's fine. It's my decision. And over the past, 2.5 years, it's like he's doing more than I even thought he was capable of. So if we had that mentality of fire fast, or, sometimes it takes people to grow into the role. But I think going back to it, the communication and set standards is, and then at the end of the day, people always ask about firing people. I don't have a belief that we fire people. I think they fire themselves because we do our best, not that we're always perfect at it, but communicating of what the level of expectation is. And if people don't fulfill that, honestly, it's not fair to the rest of the team if they continue to be here. So,
Right. Right. So going back to this, your regional manager who saw something in him that he might not even have seen in himself. How did you I'm just curious how you drew that out of him. And I hear again, you probably are going to say communication. How did you help walk him through that now where he's at a point where he's doing more than what you even anticipated?
I think that, coming from being a tech into more of a managerial role, I think that he, like I do, struggle with communication sometimes. And I remember there was one point in time where I was like, Tristan, do you understand like what I'm expecting out of this process? Because you're not doing X, Y, and Z. And out of nowhere, he wrote up this like, I think it was like 2 pages, single spaced. It was literally to a T how a car should flow through our shop from the first notice of loss to post delivery survey. And I was like, you didn't get anything wrong. Like everything was completely perfect, but you're not relaying this message. It was things like that. It's just like, okay, we just need to work on the delivery. I think the complacency, the understanding what's important to work on, what, you need to delegate. He was kind of one of those guys that he wants to have his hands on everything. And we had to teach him, you have people to fulfill that role. You have people to fulfill this role. So I think it was just, constant work on him, just like I need constant work, just like our CFO needs constant work, just like our process needs constant work. I think it's just trusting that if we continue to put in the work that we're going to get to where we need to get to. And then I honestly don't know how he went to the next level. It's just like one day I was like, wow, you just started doing all this stuff and you continue to grow. And so, I mean, who knows where he'll end up in the future, because he's already exceeded, my expectations, and I think his expectations too.
That's exciting. I'm sure that's fun for you to and fulfilling for you to see that kind of growth in your people. That's amazing.
It is. He's a huge asset to us.
Excellent. Let's transition a little away from the people side of your business into Steve's Auto Body became the area's only Tesla collision center. How do you see technology and like EV repair reshaping the future of shops?
Yeah, so we are the only one on the Illinois side of St. Louis. We do have some competitors over on the St. Louis side, but within on the Illinois side, I guess, a 3 hour radius, we are the only one.
Nice.
The EVs, I love Teslas. I think it's a great OEM. It's restricted parts, or we get a ton of volume for it. I think once you get over the hurdle of that, they're different. They're pretty straightforward to work on. They're all built similarly. So we've been a huge fan of the program. I think that, going back to I'm not a huge predictor of the future. I think that people get caught up in being prisoners of the moment with that. I think, probably when we got certified, people are like, oh, well, all the EV was the rage. I don't necessarily see EV taking over. We haven't seen a huge trickle down effect on fixing other EVs because we're Tesla certified. But on the technology side, obviously, ADAS is becoming a huge sector of our business. Whether you're bringing it in-house or not, it's completely changing, claim volume, it's changing how vehicles are getting repaired, it's changing cycle time, it's changing everything. So obviously that's going to continue to evolve. And I kind of don't like to be first to the market in anything either. I don't know if that's a good strategy or not, but I kind of want to see things develop and kind of understand them before we go diving into them. So, we'll just continue to position ourselves to where we can pivot if we need to and adapt to the changing technology. But obviously it's here and it's not going anywhere, which is fine. It is what it is. If you don't like it, what are you going to change about it? If you love it, that's great too, because you're probably going to be more successful if you adapt to it.
Those are great insights. Just be ready to transition, ready to pivot, ready to roll with it. Good insights. Hey, I'd like to have a story from you, Jordan. Maybe from a challenge or maybe a mistake that really taught you something about leadership or growth. So I don't know if I'm putting you on the spot or not, but maybe you've got a story for us.
I think I'm learning about that every day. I can be a little tight wound sometimes, and I think I wouldn't say temperamental, but I can get hot if the wires cross. And I think as I've continued to grow, the company's continued to grow, I've done my best to understand when that needs to happen and when it doesn't need to happen. And I think one of the biggest things that I've learned over the past, I don't know, year and a half is, and it goes back to the people side of things, is humble yourself. It's not about me, it's about growing the company. So if we need to add someone, if there's maybe personality disagreements, who cares? Set aside my ego and do what's best for the company. Whether that's an issue with an insurance carrier, an OEM, a jobber, whatever it is, how I feel about it is not what's important. What's going to be best for the company is important. And not always perfect with that, but I think that we've done a way better job of, looking at what makes sense and what's going to help the company be most successful. And that kind of comes into like me, taking a step back and letting our people kind of drive the bus and me be there to support them and work on growing the company while they're taking care of, their duties as well.
I appreciate your very honest answer, Jordan, of learning that about yourself and being self-aware of how to handle that as you've grown. When does it need some emotion and when not? I appreciate your
And I think
very
going back to the emotion thing, like I still run hot sometimes, but I've also learned is like, okay, why don't we just like take a breather for the weekend and we'll discuss this on Monday? Because if I have that discussion on Friday, it's not going to go well for anyone, including me. So if we
right.
just take a deep breath and think about it, it might ruin your weekend, but you're going to have a better outcome on Monday. So I think that that's something that I've been working on is is taking a deep breath and actually thinking about what's coming out of my mouth sometimes, as opposed to just running hot and let my emotion dictate my mouth.
Such good insight there. And here again, I think leaders have to be self-aware. We have to realize that about ourselves. And then, like you said, maybe just like, boom, no, we're not going to have this conversation. We're going to wait 2 days, that kind of thing. Very good. Well, we have a tradition here at the Body Shop Leaders podcast of our last guest leaving a question for the next. So I've got this question here for you. What relevant scorekeeping and sharing system do you have in place or plan to put in place?
I think that this kind of goes back to the transparency thing. We have huge scoreboards at all of our stores, so everyone
Very
knows
cool.
exactly where they're at, from sales to cycle time, touch time, hours produced, whip turn, CSI, X-ray success, vehicles delivered, all sorts of things like that. Our main
Wow.
focus as a company is driving hours out the door. That's our number one focus is we just want our technicians to worry about total hours out the door, not hours through paint, not hours. We want total hours out the door. Obviously, we from the top down look at way more than that and communicate that to them. One of the things going back to learning early on was we used to put stuff in green and red, and there would be, we set our goals aggressive, not unobtainable, but aggressive. And there would be times where it's like, say we wanted 90 hours a day out the door. Well, they hit 88. And it's like, okay, put that in red. It's like, well, then you start seeing, we went from doing maybe 75 hours to 88 hours, and you just the psychological impact of seeing a bunch of red on the board, even though you're continuing to get better. We took all that away and everything's in black now. But at the end of the day, you have to communicate how the company's doing and why you're making changes to people. So, what KPI you look at as opposed to somebody down the street, as opposed to me, might be completely different. But I think focusing on not too many things, simplifying that, and making sure that people understand what drives that is super important to helping achieve the results that you want for your company.
Great answer. I appreciate that answer. Jordan, what does being a body shop leader mean to you?
Very deep. I think it's a great industry to be in. I think we got a bunch of great people. I think we're getting a new wave of young people who have different perspectives, from cultural stuff to how they view work, how they view work-life balance, everything. At the end of the day, I guess being a body shop leader is continuing to surround myself with leaders to help make me better and our company better, and then ultimately, helping provide a lifestyle for our people that maybe they didn't think was possible, so they can take care of their families, I can take care of my family, and just continuing to be there, like we talked about, in that support role to allow our people to help us achieve our goals. At the end of the day, where we want to go as a company, you're not going to get there with one, two, three, or four people. It's got to be a team. And, our job, or my job as the leader of the company, is to be there in a support role so that can trickle down.
Love that answer. Well, Jordan, this has been incredible. I really appreciate how open you've been with sharing your journey from scaling it from a family shop, leading through growth. You've given a lot of insight into what authentic leadership looks like. And for those listening, there's a lot of takeaways here, whether you're running a small shop, managing a team, or just trying to build something better day by day. So thanks, Jordan, for joining me here on the Body Shop Leaders podcast.
Thanks for having me. It was fun.
Absolutely. You're welcome. And to our audience, if you found value in this conversation, feel free to share it with another shop owner, leader who could use some inspiration. This show is powered by Body Shop Marketing, helping collision shops grow smarter. Make sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts so you don't miss the next episode. I'm Daniel Burkholder. Thanks for listening, and keep leading from the front.